Hello, Arnav. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah. It's a bit softer in my side. Could you speak a bit louder?
Hello.
Yeah, Arnav, you have to speak louder.
Wait. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah. Keep it a bit lower. No, don't like do that. That will
Oh, okay.
do excess noise. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. 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 Sorry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you can
you
start
can share my
whenever you
screen,
want.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So should minimize that one? Yeah. So so last day, what Bornali and Preetha showed you how to calibrate and how to apply that calibration solution to your data set, and then how to split the data set, right? So you so far learned that after calibration you can take whatever you want, let's say your flux calibrator, and you split it from your total data set or you can just split your target and proceed to imaging. Now Poonam and Proshun briefly talked about, Poonam in detail talked about how to clean the basically the theory behind the clean and imaging, and also Proshun briefly talked about that, and also the self calibration. So the today's plan is I will show you how to image and what are the effects of a good UV coverage in the image plane. Also a little bit about self calibration and direction dependent calibration. So before going into that, just to tell you, this clean algorithm, which is already implemented inside Casa, it is a parallel algorithm. Okay, yeah, so higher the number of cores, it will be faster. One thing, and second thing is that it requires a lot of memory too. So I will not do the cleaning here. I will just describe the different options, and you can do it on your own later. And it will take some time also. Okay, so probably 2 hours, 3 hours, or more than that, depends upon your data size. So let's say I have already so the first task is the name of the task is clean. Okay, INP, clean, enter. So here you can see that I have already stored the parameters here. That is, I have already put those parameters so that it will not kill much time. So the first option is visibility, that you want to image, and I have already splitted the flux calibrator, which is being calibrated. Okay. So I have calibrated, I have applied that calibration to the calibrator and the target. I have splitted the flux calibrator only, and I want to image the flux calibrator, which is 3C286 for your dataset. That is the name of the input visibility file and image name. So you want to give a image name, that is I provided here fluxcal.im. You can provide anything, right? Okay, yeah, as your wish. So this is the pre-name of the output image. When this image is completed, then you will find that in your data directory where you are running this class, you will find several images, and the and those images will start with the name this fluxcal.im. Then you do not need to mention that you can provide field id. This is not required because I have only flux calibrator in my visibility file. You can choose different spectral window if you have multiple spectral window. For your dataset you do not have that. For VLA this is the normal case, they have different spectral windows. So you can choose, say you can want to image a spectral window 0, you can want to image the spectral window 1 only, or you may want to image spectral window from 0 to 3. Then you will provide like that. So a small example is also provided in the right hand side. Now in the select data 2 you can provide different range also, that is time range. Let's say you want to, the source is being observed from 10 p.m. to 12 p.m., but you want to image from 11 to 12, because you know that from 10 to 11 some RFI is there. So you can provide it here in the time range. You can also choose the UV range. Basically, let's say you know that your lower baselines, let's say up to 2 kilo lambda, all are RFI dominated. Okay. So you can altogether remove, do not use that data set. That is that particular data range in your option here, UV range. So you can just provide that greater than 2 kilo lambda. So it will take the data above 2 kilo lambda and then image it. So here again you can provide that. You can leave it out some antennas here, which we already know that those are corrupted. If you forgot to split it, flag it from your data set, you can provide it here also. And then you can provide a particular scan and all other stuff. So these are the selection of the data. Now let's come to this portion, mode. Mode is basically MFS for multi-frequency synthesis. So just to tell you here that each of these options coming from this, from that is starting from MFS, then grid mode, white field, and all other stuff. So for each option, one can spend 1 hour of time to give a lecture or give a tutorial. Okay, but I do not have that time, and I will not spend much time on this. I will just show some of the images which I have stored in the slide, and so that you can appreciate what these different options mean. Okay. And later today, Proshun will mention briefly about this multi-frequency synthesis, wide field imaging, and multi-scale imaging probably. So before going into details of all these options, let's go to the slide and let's see, try to understand what is doing. Okay, so start from Fry's first slide. Okay, good. So, so far we know that while we are doing imaging, we are basically collecting electric field at two different antenna position here, and we are cross correlating it and averaging it. That is basically giving you the visibility. And according to this Van Sitteret generic theorem, we know that this is under some approximation is a Fourier transformation of your sky signal. I sky is your specific intensity distribution of sky, and this is a Fourier pair. So I image of the sky and the measured visibility, these are Fourier conjugate pair. So what we know so far is that at each visibility is a pair of baseline, pair of antenna which constructed a baseline, and it measures a fringe pattern, right? So these two antenna measure a fringe pattern here, this closer antenna measure a fringe pattern here, and these two antenna measure a fringe pattern. So these all these collection of antennas, when we correlate it and measure the visibility, these are basically giving you a fringe pattern. So what is our goal? Our goal, we know that this image is basically the sum of all these cosine fringes. So we want to construct the sky, that is a complex diffuse source in the sky. We want to construct the sky from our measurement data set, that is the visibility. So this we measured. This is the basically UV domain plot of the visibilities, which you all of you see yesterday and day before yesterday also. And we know that these are Fourier conjugate. So the only goal or the main goal of imaging is that given this measurement, how to go there, how to reconstruct your sky signal. So that is the basic purpose of imaging, right? So now let us try to understand, if I add more and more antenna, what will happen. So let's say now you have this is not visible properly here. So you have two antenna, right? One here and one here, and you will see some kind of fringe pattern here. However, in the sky you have these not so bright but 4 point sources, but you are not able to see these sources here. You are just seeing the fringe pattern constructed by these two antennas. And now in the top left, what I show you that your visibility coordinates, that is UVW, this is your measured coordinates, are have some kind of relation, that is metric relation, with this delta x, delta y, delta z. Delta x basically the distance between two antennas in xyz coordinate system. Okay, so this is basically a coordinate transformation. This matrix is a complex matrix. I do not show it here, and this matrix basically contains your basically depends upon the hour angle, deck, and all other stuff of the source, and also the depends on the rotation. And this lambda is basically contains the frequency information. So when you plug it in here, you can go to UVW domain. This is a simple coordinate transformation, coordinate geometry, and this is being described in all of the books which Proshun shared in Slack, the white book and the blue book of NCRA and all other stuff. So right now we have a two antenna, so it will create a fringe pattern like that. You are not able to see the sources right now. Now let us go forward and let us add more antenna. Now I have added the 5 antennas, and you are basically increasing this coordinate system. I am not changing anything here, and so the fringe pattern is now changing. Right now, I have added 11 antennas and then 27 antennas. This is basically VLA image. You now suddenly show that some small structure are visible here and here, but still it is not a completely visible, and it is not possible to isolate those sources right now. Okay, so that is the effect of you. If you synthesize your UV domain with more and more data points, you will start slowly see the faint sources which are in the sky. Now what I have tried, there this is a 2 hours of Earth rotation synthesis. Now the visibility points are have rotated, so it is more sampled, and now you see that these sources are coming up, and it was not buried under noise, and you can see these bright sources are popping up. Okay, so now more hours of observation, 4 hours of observation, and then we started to increase the frequency, this lambda terms here, and it is now radially being stretched, and it is showing in the green, and you see that these sources are now properly visible. So these are actual source in the sky. These are being observed with the instrument. Okay, so our goal is to get back this kind of means, not you cannot construct the exact the sky, but you are trying to match or go as close as possible. That is your motive. So this is now 4 hours and 3 frequency multi-frequency synthesis, and this is your what is your UV domain look like, and what is your observed image looks like with this simple images. I want to mention that. So what is your point space function? You have learned so far that point space function is your Fourier conjugate of sampling function. So if you have sampled your data points in some discrete data points here in the UV domain, if you do some Fourier transformation, you will get a PSF like that. Now, one thing to notice is that your UV domain is very well covered here. Okay, and that is why your PSF looks so nice right now. And I will show you with your data set the UV domain is not so good, that it is not well synthesized, so that is why your PSF will not look good. That I will show you later. Okay, so your PSF, keep in mind that your point state function is basically the Fourier conjugate of your sampling function. Okay, so better you sample the UV domain, you will get a better, much good PSF, much good looking. Okay, so what we observe here is that whatever this is the sky, there are 4 bright sources, and it is being convolved with your PSF, and that is our observed quantity, right? That you already see in previous slide. So all we want to deconvolve this PSF from the observed image. So in the observed image, it is being convolved. The true sky is being convolved with the PSF. We want to deconvolve this PSF, and we want to get back to the sky, and that is being done with clean algorithm, deconvolution algorithm, which is being well implemented in CASA, and the basic theory have already been discussed in Poonam's lecture before. Okay. So here again, coming back to the different options, and I will now go to different options and what it means, starting from mode and everything. What is the image size we should choose? What is the cell size we should choose? And I will briefly discuss about these different options. First is choosing the image cell size. Okay, so whatever first you should measure, you should find out what is the PSF. Okay, theoretically estimate what is the PSF size. So PSF size, PSF beam width is basically depends on your wavelength and the maximum baselines you have. Okay, and and this equation is basically gives you in radian, and you want to you need to convert it into degree. However, the cell size should be chosen based on the Nyquist sample. So you want to sample your PSF with different cells, and according to Nyquist sample, you should sample it greater than two cells. Okay, so your cell size should be like that. So first you estimate the PSF, and based on that you choose the cell size. So that I will come in my next slide. What should be the case for your data set? And next calculation you should make what is the field of view. So your grid size should be inversely proportional to your field of view. So field of view, it is also very simple. It is proportional to lambda over d. The d is the dish diameter. So first, let us calculate what is your PSF size at 608 mega. Remember that 608 is basically the central frequency of your data set. So it is 1.22 star. Lambda is your wavelength corresponding to 608 megahertz, and 25 kilometer is the maximum baseline you have for GMRT. And you convert it into degree, 180 by pi, and then you multiplied it to 3600 to get this value in arc second. So if you do this calculation, you will find that your PSA beam width is 5 arc second. Now I already mentioned that cell size should be chosen to sample the PSA following Nyquist sampling. So what you want to do, you want to choose a cell size so that you can sample this PSF size greater or equal to 2. That is, the number of cell size should be greater than 2. So let us choose a cell size of 1 arc second, so that PSA will be sampled by 5 cells. That is fine, right? It is 5 is greater than 2, it is fine. I choose this 1 arc second here. So there are also disadvantage of oversampling, but I will not go into detail. But 5 is fine. So if you are sampling it by 5 cells, that is okay. Now field of view is proportional to lambda over diameter of the dish. So you know the diameter of the dish is 45 meter. Lambda is 0.49 meter. If you calculate it and convert it into arc minute, it would come of the order of 40 arc minute. Okay. So now, what is the image size we choose? So image size should be field of view divided by cell size. Okay. So if I do this calculation, I divide 40 divided by 5 arcs again, 40 arc minute divided by 5 arcs again, that will be 2400. But it is always advisable you choose the image size of the order of 2 to the power n. Basically, it is doing the fast Fourier transform, right? You grade it and do the FFT. And if you use 2 to the power n kind of grading samples, then it is always becomes faster. So we choose here 2048, which is fine. We do not need to image a large we do not need to make a large image here. Basically, the reason behind is that you have a point source in the phase center. You do not have a white field white you do not have a huge amount of sources which are distributed over the wide field of view. So it is okay if you choose 2048 number image size as a image size. So what one tip is that always make large image probably twice the field of view. Now let us go something like, let's say you want to do some EOR kind of study, and there are many bright sources at 150 megahertz. Okay, and it is distributed, let's say, up to first side lobe of your primary beam. So if you do not clean and image it and model it, then it will create a problem. It will create a aliasing problem, and it will show some structure in your image if you make a smaller image. So it is always advisable, if you are going to do some imaging at low frequency, sorry, you choose a huge field of view. You choose a image size which is almost twice or thrice your field of view size. Okay. Now let's go to wide field imaging. Okay, why you need wide field imaging? So in most of the cases you ignore this W term, right? You do not see this W term, and you say that, okay, we do not need this W, this value is close to 1, and we can ignore it. But in some cases you cannot ignore that thing. And when this is the case, if you want to image, if your source lies far away from safe center, okay, so your phase center is coming, say, let's say your source is close to your field of view here, that is two antennas is looking into up. But let's say now source is lying far away from your phase center. Then what will happen, that your curvature term, this sky curvature term comes up. And then at that point, your n value is not negligible, and you cannot ignore this W and n here. So so the only solution is you need to do it, you need to solve the W term effect, okay, in during imaging. That can be done, and the most known algorithm is W projection algorithm, and that is being most probably discovered and written by Urvashi Rao and Tim Cornwell. Okay. So what is the effect of W term? Now let's say you have some bright sources which are far away from your field center. This is your field center, but you have some bright sources far away from the field center. You will see that there are some arc kind of structure, and these are basically effect of W term. If you do not use the W term algorithm, you will see that kind of structure. And this is a W term is basically a phase error. It is coming at e to the power minus W. So W term is basically a phase error kind of problem, and you will see this kind of structure. So there are two solutions in apes. In earlier time, it is a facet based imaging. I will not go into I will not talk about the algorithm of this imaging technique. But if you do facet based imaging, then you may reduce this effect a little bit further. But if you do this W term W projection algorithm, which is okay, Cornwell et al. 2008, it is first time published here. So if you do this, and then you can actually remove this arc like structure around those bright sources. So you need to solve for W term effect here. So this is the option here. So if you choose a grid mode white field, and if you know how many W term is required, you can provide it here. But I choose -1. What -1 gives you? -1 basically automatically determine how many W projection plane you require. Okay. So if you do -1, it is fine. CASA will automatically detect based on your field of view and all other parameters that what are the number of W projection planes you require to correct for white field effect. So to apply the W correction, what you need to use grid mode equals to white field, and you need to provide W projection plane equals to -1. You can provide 128, 256, 512, anything here, but larger the W projection base, larger it will be more heavy, memory heavy, and it will also take more amount of time. Okay. Now go to multi-term, that is multi-frequency synthesis. Okay, a multi-term multi-frequency synthesis, and Proshun probably discuss some theory behind this multi-term multi-frequency synthesis, and I will just show you some result here. Okay, so what happens if you have a wide bandwidth? Let's say for you are observing something with UGMRT, that is wideband upgraded GMRT, and your bandwidth is 400 megahertz, and or another example is you are observing with VLA in L band, the bandwidth is 1 gigahertz. Now 1 gigahertz to 2 gigahertz, that is the frequency chunk. So bandwidth is 1 gigahertz. Remember that for your data set, the bandwidth is only 33 megahertz. Now we are talking about a 1 gigahertz bandwidth, which is huge comparative to 33 megahertz. So what will happen that your specific intensity, that is I sky, it is not a constant. It is not a, just a flat spectrum. It may change, right? You know the synchron theory. It is basically the synchron emission, and it is goes as a power of alpha. But it may happen that it has a breakage, and it is again have a some sharp spectral index. Your source may have some sharp spectral index. It has a breakage. It has a curvature term. All other stuff is there. So if you just image at a central frequency and you do not model the sources as a function of frequency, then it will be problematic. So what is the solution? Solution is you do multi-frequency synthesis. Okay. So in that case, what it happens is that you are modeling the sources as a function of bandwidth. That is the basic motivation behind doing the multi-frequency synthesis. So whenever you have a wide band, you should do a multi-frequency synthesis, not a single collapsed image at the central channel, and not doing the multi-frequency. So here is an example of a 1 gigahertz bandwidth, and this is a source 3C286, which is the flux calibrator for your case. So if this source has been observed with a 1 gigahertz bandwidth, and if you use a n term 1, that is, there is no correction for the multi-frequency wideband effect, you will see a structure like that. Basically, these are the artifacts. Okay. Now you use in term 2, that is you are modeling the sources, and you are also modeling the alpha of the sources, that is the spectral index. Then you started to see that source. Now let us understand that the bandwidth is 1 gigahertz. It may have a curvature term, higher order curvature term, right? So then you to model that, you need to provide the option n term 3, n term 4, and since this is a 1 gigahertz bandwidth, n term 4 is giving you the best dynamic range. Dynamic range is greater than million here, and you see that the source is extremely well modeled and it can be seen clearly here. Okay, so this is the effect of multi-frequency synthesis. So these are the options in casa. If you choose mode equals to MFS, MFS is stands for multi-frequency synthesis, and you need to provide the n term 1, 2, 3, or 4, depend upon your bandwidth. So if you are observing for a 1 gigahertz bandwidth, you should provide 4. If you are observing for 200 or 300 400 megahertz bandwidth, using UGMRT, you probably want to model it say 2 or 3 terms. And if the bandwidth is very small, for your case that is that only 33 megahertz or 16 megahertz bandwidth, in term 1 is fine. So you are approximating that the source is not changing much over that small bandwidth. Okay. So these are the two options I just discussed. One is wide field effect, that is W projection algorithm, and another one is multi-frequency synthesis, that is required when you are observing a source for a using a wide band. Now let's come to multi-scale. So if you remember Poonam's lecture, whatever you do in clean is that you model each sources as a series of delta function, right? However, that is only a good approximation for point sources. That is, you are unable to resolve that source. But if you have a complex structure like that in the right, and if you model these a series of or summation of point sources, that is not a good approximation, right? So what else you can do? The solution is you use a multi-scale cleaning. What is that? You choose different scales, that is a small scale, a little bit bigger scale, then another little bit bigger scale, and another little bit bigger scale, and you use this scale to search for emission in your image. Okay, so it will not only do the point source modeling, it will also search for emission at different scales, so that will affect your modeling of your complex structure. If you have a point source, that is fine, then you do not need to do multi-scale cleaning. However, if you have a complex diffuse kind of structure, it is always advisable to use different scale to search emission, so that you can better model that emission coming from that complex structure. So here is an sorry, here is an example that if you have a complex structure like that and you use simple clean algorithm, nothing else, so what it will do, it will model this source as a collection of point sources, so it will not look good, right? Now you can do this MEM. I am not going into that. That is the maximum entropy method, whatever Poonam discussed, and it is doing better than clean, but it is still not most accurate thing. However, if you do the multi-scale cleaning, you see that the image is nice, and it is actually modeled different kind of scales here, that is small scales here and large scales here, and it is basically giving you or reconstruct the sky more appropriately. So if you have a complex structure in your phase center or in your field of view, you should use multi-scale clean, not the only clean option. Here is the same image, but here I am showing you model and the residual. If you use the clean only, there are lots of other residuals visible in your residual image. However, if you use multi-scale, it is mostly gone. So you that again tells you that multi-scale is basically modeling your structure more appropriately than clean. Okay. So now many times you heard that Poonam also said, Proshun also said that different people may image a source differently, and based on their choice your image will be different. So let's say there is a this is a supernova remnant and at 3 gigahertz with VLA, and it has some complex structure, and it is a wide field effect also. There are sources outside, bright sources outside, and for that you cannot ignore the W term. Now let's say I am doing this image and I do not know a priori, or I do not have the knowledge of W term and all other stuff. I just use a multi-scale clean, MS clean. Okay. So what will happen that if I do that kind of imaging, this there are some effects, some artifacts is there, and those are still visible in this image. Now let's move forward. Let's Bernoulli came, and Bernoulli know W projection algorithm. He applied MS along with W projection. Now you see that there's arc-like structure around these bright sources away from your phase center that has gone. That is, these are not still visible, right? Now Pritha came and she knows multi-scale, multi-frequency synthesis, also W projection. So she applied all these stuffs because she knows that it is a 1 gigahertz bandwidth or more than 1 gigahertz bandwidth. She also knows that it is a complex structure, so one should apply multi-scale. And she also knows that the W term should be corrected for here, so she applied W projection algorithm, and you see that it is far better than the first one, whatever I made. Now let's say any more experienced guy, let's say Proshun came and he has say 10 years or 20 years of experience. Whatever he did is that he first used a multi-scale clean. He used that model and he started cleaning from that model. And let's see what he get. He gets the best result among all of us, right? So this is the multi-scale multi-frequency synthesis, then W projection algorithm, and then also he use a model which is the first coming from the first image, so that gives him the best image. So that is the reason behind saying that different people may image a same source in different way, but they will get different result. So it is more like knowledge, your experience, and all other stuff that you can do it in a more better or more appropriate way. Still, okay, so the options to provide in the CASA for multi-scale is here. And if you do not provide anything, that is, it is a closed bracket, that means it will do the standard clean. So it will not look for further emission. So the advisable thing is that since I have this small bandwidth data set that is 33 megahertz bandwidth, and I have a point source at the same base center, I do not need to do multi-scale clean. That is why I kept it like that. However, if you have a complex structure, you should choose different scale, let's say 0, 2, 4, 5, 6. So 2 means 2 times your synthesized beam, 4 means 4 times your synthesized beam. This is basically the scale size. So what CASA will do, CASA will search in your image emission at different scales other than 0. Okay. So that is all. So what I mentioned is that I mentioned multi-scale, I mentioned W projection, I mentioned MFS, and I also mentioned what is the image size you should choose, what is the cell size you should choose. Now next come the Briggs weighting, and this is the weighting of your data set from natural to uniform. So Briggs, Dan Briggs from NRAO, he developed this algorithm, and there are different options of that. I am not going into detail because you already seen the different weighting scheme in Poonam's. So I just choose Briggs weighting and robust equals to 0, which is basically a compromise between natural and uniform. So different weighting scheme has different effect in your image, but I will not go into detail of that in this lecture. Okay. You can ask me later also, or you can go back and check Poonam's lectures. So I am just keeping all the other options here as it is, and I am not doing anything else. And these are the more advanced stuff, and I am not going into details of that. Okay, so this is the image. I have already made that image for you, and I am not going to show how to do it. So in the left, this is the flux calibrator image. You have already seen that image from Preetha's lecture also, and also Bornali show you that image. And this is the target image. So I have splitted the target, and I made the same image with Briggs weighting 0 and all the other options which I show you just a few minutes back. And this is the target. That is the target source, a bright point source in the center. Now note that there are some stripes. So this is basically telling you some bad data is still left in your data, in your observation. So you need to flag those, one thing. And also you see that there are some symmetric stripes are there. So it is again telling you there are some calibration error too. So if you remove all the bad data set, if you calibrate further and you are more accurate in your calibration, this stripe will go away. So remember that I told you what is the effect of PSF. So PSF is basically the Fourier conjugate of your sampling function, right? So if you more and more data points in your UV domain, that is you sampled your UV domain more uniformly and more appropriately, you will get a nice PSF. Remember that your PSF is convolved with your sky, and that is you observed with your instrument. And all the purpose of clean is deconvolve this PSF. So if your PSF looks nice, it is the work is much more easier than a nasty bad looking PSF. Okay, so that is the case for our purpose. So you remember from my from my first lecture that this is the UV domain sampling of our data set, right? It is extremely bad. You see that there are lots of huge holes and it is not properly or more uniformly sampled in the UV domain. And you have a PSF image of that. That is basically, this image is a Fourier conjugate of this UV sampling function, and you see that this is your PSF looks like, and this is not a good PSF in comparison with the previous one. You see that in this case your PSF looks extremely good. However, for your data set your PSF is not good. The basic reason behind that, your sampling function is not good. However, I show you this left panel image. That is the wideband image which I made in my PhD. That is the sampling function of the LS North 1 field using the wideband observation of GMRT starting from 300 to 500 megahertz. So this is far better. Like, this UV sampling is far better than the previous one. And if you make an image from that, and if you do just Fourier transform, that is the PSF looks like given this UV sampling. Okay, so your GMRT observation will not always look bad. For your data set it is bad because it is a small chunk of data, small bandwidth, and only one scan. However, if you observe the target for wide bandwidth observation using wide bandwidth and observe it for, let's say, 8 hours or 10 hours, your UV sampling will be very nice. It is mostly covered, and if you make a PSF image of that, you will get a nice looking PSF. Okay, so that is another effect which I discussed before also, and now again. So another thing just to look into that, GMRT has a sparse sampling at the far away from the from the central core. That is because it has only few antennas there. Okay, so no need to worry about this thing. This will always be there. There will be some gap here also. Now, Proshun briefly told you what is the self-cal, what is the motivation.
Can I make a comment here if you go back?
Mhm.
Yeah. So it is not always required for a given science case that you need to have a very good PSF,
Exactly, yeah.
because maybe what you are trying to observe is a source at the phase center.
Mhm.
Okay, you want to observe a point source. I think that was the case for the data which is given to you.
Right.
Depends on the science case. You are just interested in the source at the center. So if you are interested in the source at the center, if you remember the equation that we wrote down, there are many terms which doesn't have much effect. Okay, you can still get a reasonable approximation of the sky brightness at the central pixel, just observing it for a very small amount of time, and which will give you a small PSF. But if you want to map a larger area of the sky, then there is no alternative other than having a very nice PSF. Okay, so I just wanted to add that.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with Proshun, and whatever he said is correct. Basically, in this purpose, our motive is to make a wide field image of the LS North 1 field, and we are interested in. There are many bright sources there, and we are interested in all these sources. And for your purpose, this is not the scenario. Yeah, I will show you the image of LS North 1 field in a short time. Okay. So, Proshun briefly mentioned that what is the iterative algorithm one should do for the self calibration. So, what you want to do, you want to minimize this, right? So, this slide is being taken from RA school of at NCRA. So, you observe something, you have a you have a very good model of your image, and you want to minimize this via chi-square minimization or some more modern algorithm. Okay, you want to find out the gain terms. So the key is that you should have a good model, right? You should have a good model, and other than that, this algorithm should fail. This algorithm will not work if you do not have a good model. So that is the basic purpose of self calibration. That is, you made a fast image which is very good, and then based on that model, the model which is being created from the fast image, you started your self calibration loop. So here it is written here, and Proshun also show the same thing. So I will not repeat the same thing here. So you have a fast image, then you model that, you have a model data column, and from that you calibrate, and then again you made another image, and then again you go back to model, you calibrate again and make another image like that. So this is a loop. This loop will go on and go on till you will not get any improvement in your sky image. Okay. So fast, see few tips of self calibration. It is not a magic. So you will see in a little bit that you will get a great image out of self calibration. But it is not always a magic. Don't think that it will always work. It will only work. It is largely depends upon how good your model is. I am iterating it again that it is mostly depends on that main trick is lie here. You make a great model first. If you have a good model and if you do not have bad data means much bad data in your after the calibration, then it will work. Okay, that is the first tip. So you should not expect that, or you okay, I get an image, now let's go to self calibration, I should get a great improvement. It is not the case. You will be disappointed in that. If you have a good model image, then it is fine, then it should work and it will give you a good result. So this is the way how I did it. So many people did it in different ways, but this is how I did it. So first I make a blind image, that is there is no masking, and I will not go very deep. I will not clean it in very deep. I will make a shallow clean up to some large threshold. I will provide a threshold, and that is large. That is not the expected RMS value. So let's say you have a expected RMS value 1 millijansky. So you will first time you probably clean up to 3 sigma or 4 sigma threshold. Okay. Then you get an image. First make a blind image, you get an image, and then create a mask based on that first image. Okay. Why it is necessary is that the basic reason is that this step is crucial. If you do not mask, that is for the first image you do not have mask, right? But when you get a first image, you can make a mask and you can make another image using that mask. But if you do not use that mask, your image artifacts will propagate into your model and your self-cal solution will not be good. Okay, so the basic the take away points from these two steps is that you first make a blind image, you then create a mask, and then you do another image using that mask so that your model image looks good and your in your model there is no artifacts. Okay, now once you get the mask image, check the model image. That is essential. You check always okay, it is good enough or not to proceed to self calibration. Let's say your model image is very bad, there is no point in going into self calibration loop and waste your time. Okay, so if you are okay with the model, then start calibrating with GainCal task in Casa. Use a large solution interval at the beginning. Say if you have a 30-minute scans on target, you may start with a solution interval of 8 or 10 minutes. Okay, that is your in your GainCal task, and then you slowly decrease. You slowly decrease. Say from 8 minutes you go to 6, then go to 4, then go to 2, then go to 1, like that. You slowly decrease if your image showing improvement. If your image does not show any improvement, then there is no point again to do self calibration. So once you do this GainCal task, you generate the calibration table, you apply the solution, image the corrected data with an updated mask, and check the model image again. Then perform these 3, 4, and 5 these steps again in a iterative loop, and each time you check your image for the signal to noise ratio. That is your what is your maximum flux, what is the RMS you are getting. You divide it. That is giving you the signal to noise ratio. If your signal to noise ratio is not improving in each cycle, then there is no point. You should stop there. That is your self cal is not working there. Okay. Another last step is that you can always remove RFI in between by flagging the residual data column. What is that? So you correct it, right? You generate the GainCal solution, you applied that to your data, you have a corrected data column, and you have a model data column based on your model. So the residual data column is basically the subtraction of model from the corrected. So in your residual data, if you have a flagging, if you have a bad data, that will pop up. Okay, and it is easier to flag that, and you can use a automatic flagging algorithm like rflag and tfcrop, which we did not show in this tutorial. In Casa, you can flag that in between your GainCal loop, or sorry, self calibration loop. So these are the some basic tips of self calibration. You can find different other techniques too, but these are the most basic things I discussed here. Now let's check. This is the LS northbound field image which I made, and you see that there are huge amount of bright sources which are far away. This is my face center, which are far away from my face center, and there are some these starry patterns are here, and these are more or less giving me a good model so that I can start a self calibration. Okay, I this is a masked image. I use a mask. I made that an image that is the IM0 is the 0th level. That is the first cycle self calibration loop. It is the first one. First image I made using a mask, and I get these bright sources in my image, and I will start the self calibration from here. So this is IM1. That is the second image. That is I generate the gain solution based on the image here, based on the model here. I generate the gain solution. I applied this to the data set and I image the corrected data set. And let's say this is my first solution. Now, if you see that, you already get a good improvement in your image. You just notice in this around these bright sources in your field of view, this is IM0. Here are some artifacts and some study pattern, but you reduce to a significant level after a first round of self calibration. So this gives me a positive motivation that okay, self cal is working, and let's go and do more and more generate more and more gain calibration and image and proceed with the self calibration loop. So this is IM3. I skip some loop in between. So this is the third image. I am still getting improvement. This is the eighth one. I get a huge improvement here. There are lots of bright sources which are popping up right now since the RMS is decreasing and I am getting a good signal to noise ratio. But in the ninth and eighth cycle, I see that there is not much improvement after that. Okay. After eight cycle and
No,
after make hello.
or no, maybe a question for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
That you see so many sources near to the center of the field of view,
Mm-hmm.
but why the sources reduces outside the field of view?
So yeah, okay. So this is not the the SNR is the RMS is decreasing, right? There are source, there are faint sources, but I cannot see it properly here. Yeah, am I correct or no?
No, no, that is all right. I mean, it's a antenna beam pattern is not taken care of, right?
Oh yeah, obviously. I will not talk about the primary beam correction.
Right, right. No, but I'm saying that's why I
Yeah,
say
yeah.
this question for the audience.
Okay. Yeah, obviously there is antenna beam pattern, and we are not correcting for that. Let's say we are not going into that detail. That is again more complicated. And
So it's being shown here that at the center, your gain is more towards that the center. As you go
Right.
outside, the gain is less. You collect less information
Right.
from the outer part of the field of view because your ALM, remember, if once it goes outside the field of outer part of the field of view, the ALM value reduces.
Right.
So the signal you are collecting less and the noise is almost similar,
Mhm.
which means that signal to noise is less at the outer part. So you get to see less and less number of
So,
sources.
right. Okay. Thanks. And so after eighth and ninth, found that there is not much improvement. So I should stop the self calibration here, and then just to give you uh, an example with this GIF. So this one is the after self calibration. This is the before self calibration. Okay. So before self calibration, you see that there is lots of artifacts and the RMS is huge. We do not able to see most of the sources since the SNR is less. However, after the 9 cycles of self calibration, we get a great improvement, right? You should appreciate that the self calibration works in this case. However, one thing to notice is that there are still some starry pattern around this bright sources which we are not able to solve or reduce using the only sky-based self-calibration. This is the direction-independent calibration. Remember that Oshun mentioned it to you. There are two kind of solution: direction-independent, direction-dependent. And at low frequency, your ionosphere is a problem for you. So you need to do direction-dependent calibration to improve more. So this is what we get after self-calibration loop. However, if you want more improvement, you need to perform direction dependent calibration. Okay. So I think you appreciate that how self-calibration works and how self-calibration improves your image from the first cycle to the last cycle. This is the zoom in part of the image. That is the central portion. Okay. Now the direction independent versus direction dependent. So I will not tell you how to do it. So this is there is a package called spam written by Hive Intima in Leiden, And there's a paper by Intima 2017, which is a TGSS paper. You can look into that, and it is publicly available. You can install it and you can do direction dependent calibration. But so far, it is being applied to the small 32 megahertz bandwidth. Okay. So we also applied this to only central 32 megahertz, not central, around 325 megahertz, 32 megahertz bandwidth. And we find that, okay, after direction dependent calibration, this around these sources, we can get a reasonable good solution, and we can remove these artifacts with the direction dependent. That is, we are basically all the gain terms which are dependent on your direction, we are taking out that from your image. Okay, that we are taking out from your data set. So that is required to get more high dynamic range image, and to, if your ionosphere is more troublesome in the low frequency, that is essential to perform the direction dependent calibration. It is extremely difficult. The algorithm is also complicated, but we will not discuss it here. I made it with this LS Northbound field. I am just showing you the improvement between direction independent versus direction dependent. So this is another image. This is the wideband direction dependent calibration along with mosaic. So there are, we will not discuss the mosaic here. That is, we have three different pointings of your sky, and we do the mosaic, and also perform the direction dependent calibration. So this image is at 750 megahertz, bandwidth is 400 megahertz, and it is being used. So Cubical is another software tool developed by Meerkat people, and that is being used to generate this kind of image. And there are other softwares also available, like QLMS, which Lofa extensively used. Then DDFacet, this is an imager tool that is being used by Meerkat and Lofa. So if you want to know more about this algorithm, these are more modern algorithm, and there are lots of complex mathematics too. So if you want to understand this different kind of algorithm, you should check Oleg Smirnov's paper, right? So it is basically written by either Oleg Smirnov, most probably will be co-author, written by his students. So he different students like Cyril Tassi, Benjamin Hugo, and all other people. So if you want to look into that, you can always go and check his paper. So this is another wideband direction dependent calibration. Just notice around these bright sources, right? 1, 2, and 3. In the end, this is a primary beam corrector, so there are noise here, and we have cut this antenna pattern up to some threshold, let's say 0.1 or 0.2. But you just look into these three sources, you will appreciate that how direction dependent calibration improves your image significantly. Your signal to noise ratio have been increased, and you are getting a good result or good image of your sky using direction dependent calibration. Now, last thing I want to mention before Shomitar's lecture is that point source subtraction, that is UV sub in CASA. So what Prasunda mentioned to you is that you first made a good image of your field of view, and then you model these bright sources, which are basically foregrounds for your purpose, right? You want to measure H1. You do not want to measure you do not want to see the foregrounds, right? So one way is to do that. You first do a very precise calibration, then you apply that calibration, you make a great model, and then you subtract that model from your data set. And then the residual will looks like that. It is more or less like noise. However, this residual always contains the diffuse foreground emission from our own galaxy, and how to estimate the power spectrum for that will be shown by the last tutorial by Shomit Choudhury. And but I will not go into detail of that right now. So if you have a model, you can always subtract that model using the task name UV sub in CASA. And this is the real data set. That is whatever I have done with LS Northbound field. I have this model, which is a collection of lots of point sources in our field of view. And I subtracted that model, and this is the residual looks like. Okay. So this is the task name. This is called UV sub. If you go in CASA, write INP UV sub or default UV sub, you will see that you need to provide the visibility name for this. It is for my purpose, it is that is the name. For your purpose, whatever you provided the name of your target field, you can provide it here, and reverse should be false. And if you just click on go or just write go, and then what it will do, it will subtract the model data column from your corrected data column, and it will put the subtracted result in your corrected data column. Okay, so this is your amplitude versus UV wave looks like for my purpose, for my data set before UV sub. That is the corrected data column. You will see that the amplitude is of the 0.6 Jansky here. Okay. However, when I made a model, I subtracted that model, I again plotted the corrected data column as a function of UV wave. After the subtraction, this amplitude goes significantly down. It is of the order 0.20, 0.25. So whatever I have done here, I made the image, I made a good model of all the point sources in our my field of view. I then subtracted that model data column from my observed or corrected data column using the UV sub in CASA, and I get a significant decrease in this amplitude versus UV wave plot. So you can always check it for your purpose too. Okay, so this is at the point where I should end. So after this UV sub, what you will expect, you will expect that your visibility should be dominated by diffuse synchronous foreground that is coming from our galaxy. You have subtracted the point sources, so now you can proceed to estimate the power spectrum of that diffuse synchronous signal, which is still remain in your visibility dataset after UV sub task, and that will be shown by Shomir in the last lecture. So now I just want to show you in terminal that for your purpose you want to measure a image of your flux calibrator. You provide this thing. I mentioned that you may want to choose white field, and n iter is basically how many iteration, how many clean iteration it will perform, and threshold is giving, I provided is 0.1 millijansky based on some rough calculation of your sigma, and that is the stopping threshold, right? So what clean will do, clean will try to find out the emission in your image, and it will try to model, put in the model, and then go to the next cycle. That is, clean has a number of iterative cycles in between, and to stop this, it will not go infinite amount of time, right? You need to stop at somewhere, so you need to provide some threshold. So if the clean residual reach that threshold, it will stop. If the clean residue, if there are 50 here, 1 2 3, if the number of iteration reach 50,000, then it will stop, or if threshold reach before that, then it will stop. So these are the two criteria to stop the clean cycle. Okay, then I do not provide the multi-scale here since my source is a point source at the phase center. I do not, I just provide the image here. I do not have a mask a priori with me, so I do not provide any mask. But if you do want to do self calibration, you need to make a first image without mask and then create a mask from that image, then provide a mask here and started your cleaning. I provide the image size, I provide the cell size, I do not mention anything here, it is default, and I use the Briggs weighting with robust parameter 0.0, and I kept everything else as it is. So if I if I write go, it will start the cleaning process. I am not doing it here. You can uh, try to do it in your own machine at your own convenient time. So I just want to show you LA. So I have already made this image, flux scale image, and also the target image. So when the cleaning completed, it will give you several images, right? So with different extensions. So flux scale IM, that is the initials I have provided here as the image name, and it will give me different images with this same initial. The flux scale IM dot flux dot image dot model dot psf dot residual. So you can open every image in viewer. I will show you here, and you can check what this image gives you. Flux is basically gives you the flux. Image is your original image, which I show you before, which also Bornali show you, and Preetha also show you. Model is the model image, which I show you in the self calibration loop. PSF is the PSF image, that is also I show you before. And residual, what is the residual left after this clean happened. So this is the flux scale, this is the age, the target with the Briggs weighting, the same thing. And let's check how to open that image. I hope this will not hang my laptop. Let's see. Viewer. You just need to write viewer and enter. Okay. So this this thing will come up. This is again a user graphics based and you graphics based tool to view different kind of images in your inside the casa. So you can just choose this image. uh, let's plot the flux scale first. Where is my flux scale? Yeah, you can choose this flux scale im dot image, and you need to click on this raster image. Okay. You will see that here at the bright points and at the face center, there is already something is showing up. So you can change different things. First, let's zoom in. There is this plus and this sign here. You can click on that. It will zoom into the source. Okay. Then you can click into this data display option. So it will open up another window here. I just make it always on top. I first thing to change is that the data range. It is more or less like saturated, right? So that is why I am changing my data range. Now I am changing the scaling power. -1 or maybe a little bit more. So some noise is now also showing around that part source. You can make it more looks good by choosing this center and should pop up. Sorry. Okay, it is not coming right now. Basically, this RAM issue. But okay, so this is your image. This is your flux calibrator here. And if you want to find out what is the flux value, let's see view. It should show you the cursor. So here it is showing me the different values. So if I just point my pointer here at the center, so it is giving you the RA deck in the right here. That is the RA deck of the phase center or the peak of the source of the 3C286. I means Stokesai. I made a Stokesai image. 607.67. This is the central frequency of your image. That is what we have observed. That is what is the value of our data set. And if I click here again, it will give me a flux value which is 21.6 Jansky. Note that we set a model for TC286 which is the value of which is 22 Jansky, and it is you are getting something closer to that. So and again it is it is telling you that okay, your flux calibrator image is fine, right? So by this process you can you can view your image, you can check different things, and you can check whether it is good or bad or something like that. And take a homework for you. You can, if you made an image for the target, you can open up in Casa viewer and check what is the target source will look like. Okay, so I will stop here. If you have any questions or any doubt, I will be happy to answer. Yeah. So this is my flux calibrator image. This is my in the right. This is the target. So if you do this task in your home, you should get this image. Hello.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So I am done. So if anyone has any question, I can ask. I can try to answer.
I don't see any hands. There are only 5 people. I don't think there is question.
Okay, then we should stop here or come back at 2:30, or if you have any announcement.
Yeah.